Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. My name is Jack. 2 years ago, after a divorce and losing my job at an insurance company in Los Angeles, I decided to search for peace. Alaska seemed like the perfect choice, a wild, sparsely populated land where I could forget the troubles of life. I bought a 2-story log cabin, 30 miles from the nearest town, nestled deep in a vast pine forest. The house was old but sturdy, with large windows that looked out over lush green treetops. The area wasn't as deserted as I had imagined. Besides my place, there were a few other homes scattered within a few miles, owned by year-round locals or people who used them as vacation homes. I loved the mornings on my porch, sipping coffee and watching the sun peek through the treetops. Life here was simple, and I began to feel like I was slowly healing. My closest neighbor was Thomas, a middle-aged man who lived half a mile away. He was tall, silver-haired, and always wore a navy blue knit cap. The cap looked worn, but it had style, almost like it was part of his identity. I once joked that if he ever didn't want it anymore, I'd gladly buy it from him. Thomas was friendly, often dropping by and helping me settle into this new way of life. For the first 3 months, life was peaceful. I'd get up early, drink coffee on the porch, and watch the sun rise over the trees. In the afternoons, I'd read or hike through the forest. Thomas would visit 2 or 3 times a week, always bringing along interesting stories about life in the wild. Everything changed on a night in October. I woke up to strange noises coming from downstairs. The clock read 2:17 a.m. At first I thought it was the wind, but the sounds had a rhythm, like footsteps, someone trying to move quietly. My heart pounded. I moved toward the door and listened carefully. I heard soft clinking sounds. Someone was inside. I slowly opened the door, crept into the hallway, and looked down. Through the window slats, I saw a flashlight beam sweeping across the living room. There were 2 of them. Panic surged through me. I had no weapon in the bedroom. My hunting rifle was in a closet downstairs. If they found it, that would be a nightmare. I crawled to the corner of the room and hid behind an old wooden wardrobe. From there, I could see the stairs through a small crack in the door. A tall, thin figure in a black hoodie moved slowly through the living room, shining a flashlight around like he knew the layout. I couldn't see the second person, but I heard footsteps coming from the kitchen. Cold sweat trickled down my back. In my panic, I glanced out the window. At the edge of the forest, maybe 20 meters from the house, a figure stood perfectly still. He was tall and wore a knit cap. It looked just like Thomas's. He didn't move, just stood there, watching the house. A chill ran down my spine. Thomas? I wondered. But I couldn't trust what I was seeing. Suddenly, the footsteps downstairs got closer to the stairs. I quickly slipped into the closet and pulled the door almost shut, leaving a small crack. Through it, I saw the flashlight beam enter the bedroom. The light swept across the bed, the desk, then stopped right in front of the closet. I held my breath, biting my lip to stay silent. The man stepped into the room, his heavy boots thudding on the wooden floor. He paused, checked under the bed, then turned and walked back out. Just then, red and blue police lights flashed from a distance. Later, I learned that a neighbor a few miles away had seen suspicious people heading toward my house and called the police. I heard the intruder's footsteps pounding down the stairs. The back door slammed, Then, silence. The police searched the house and the surrounding woods. They caught one of the intruders, a guy around 30 with a creepy grin. The other two got away. When the officer asked me for details, I told him everything, including the figure at the edge of the forest wearing the knit cap. But when they checked, there were no footprints, no trace at all. I began to wonder if I had imagined the figure. The police said the others might come back, so they arranged for me to stay at a small motel in town for a few days, with an officer checking in regularly. I brought only a few personal items, but the unease stayed with me. I sat in the motel room, gripping my hunting rifle, eyes fixed on the window. The next morning, I decided to find Thomas. I needed to talk to someone. He was the only person I trusted out there. But Thomas's house was empty. No car in the garage, no lights. I knocked, called his name, nothing. He was gone. The following days were filled with anxiety. I began to suspect Thomas. The knit cap, his build, and his sudden disappearance. It was all too much of a coincidence. I dug through my memories, trying to recall if he had ever asked strange questions or acted suspiciously. But all I could remember were his friendly smiles and stories about Alaska. Was he really who I thought he was? A week after the break-in, I contacted the real estate company. I needed to sell the house immediately. Now I live in a small apartment in Portland. I have a new job, a stable life. But sometimes, on dark nights, I still feel like someone's watching me through the window. And I still wonder, where is Thomas now? Every time I'm home alone, I remember that night. It's been almost 3 years, but the knock on the door in the middle of the night still makes me jump. I'm Bianca. At the time, I was 15 years old and lived with my dad in a small house in West Lubbock, Texas. Our neighborhood was pretty quiet, with one-story houses lined up along a straight street, neatly trimmed lawns, and white picket fences. The people here were pretty private. My dad worked the night shift at a textile factory. I was used to being home alone. My dad always told me to lock the doors carefully and not to open the door for anyone, not even our neighbors. That night, I was sitting in the living room watching a movie. Since I didn't have school the next day, I was up pretty late. It was about 10 p.m. I don't remember the exact time. A knock on the door sounded, 3 gentle taps, then silence. My heart skipped a beat. Who would come at this hour? I muted the TV and quietly went to the door. Through the peephole, I saw a girl. She was very young, probably my age. She was dressed simply and seemed decent. Behind her was a gray car parked near the curb. I opened the door a crack, with the security chains still on. I'm sorry to bother you so late. My car broke down. Can you come out and help me take a look? Her voice sounded very normal, even a little shy. I don't know anything about cars, but I can call a tow truck for you. She quickly declined, saying it was just a small issue with a dashboard light. I still refused. I didn't have my driver's license yet, and never paid attention to those things when I was in a car. You should call someone who knows more about cars, or you'll just be wasting more time. I said that, but the girl's pleading attitude became more urgent. She moved closer to the door with a pitiful expression. I can't help you. I stood firm in my decision, closed the door, and locked it. Through the peephole, I saw her still standing there, staring at the door. At that moment, my heart pounded faster when I met her gaze. A few seconds later, she turned and walked toward the car. I stood there watching, and was so shocked I froze. The girl didn't get into the driver's seat as I had expected. Instead, she opened the back door and got into the back seat. I was a little confused because she said the problem was with the dashboard in the front. The car started to move. Then a thought came into my head. If she wasn't driving the car, then who was? I ran to the window, pulled the curtains back, and watched the car as it drove away. So, the entire time she was standing at my front door, there was someone else in the car, waiting. I remembered how she had insisted on me coming outside, not accepting any other solution. I was so lucky that I had been firm. My dad's words before he went to work were always deeply ingrained in my mind, and they helped me avoid danger. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, constantly looking out the window and listening to every sound. When my dad came home the next morning, I told him what had happened. He immediately called the police, but there weren't many clues. No license plate number, no names, just a vague description of the girl and the gray car. The most important thing was that I was safe. I had listened to him, and he was very proud of me for that. Even so, it wasn't easy for me to get over it. My dad had to ask for a shift change to be home with me. We installed a bunch of cameras and a doorbell camera. Slowly, my life returned to normal. But the question about that girl still haunts me. Who was she? Was she a victim who was forced? Or was she a part of a plot? And most importantly, what would have happened if I had gone outside that night? To this day, every time I hear a knock on the door at night, my heart still tightens. The image of that girl's cold eyes and the back car door closing are still burned into my memory. I know that if I had just unlocked the door a little that day, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. I'm really into exercising and playing sports. But since I spend most of my day working, running at night seems like the best option. In an evening, after wrapping up a ton of work, I grabbed a quick snack, changed into my running gear, and headed down to the park below my apartment to blow off some steam. The park was empty at that time, but suddenly I heard a noise behind me. I instinctively turned my head and was startled to see a tall, dark figure running behind me. I started running faster, and my heart was racing out of control. But I could feel the person behind me getting closer and closer. My mind started racing with all sorts of worst-case scenarios. The more I ran, the faster I went, all flustered and panicked, with my heart pounding so hard it was tough to breathe. Not daring to turn around, I glanced to the side and saw the person's dark shadow falling onto the road right next to me. There was a couple being intimate up ahead, so I didn't hesitate to run over and shout for help. The girl in the beautiful white dress got up and walked over to me with a surprised look on her face. I gasped, turned around, and saw someone in a tracksuit running past. "Are you okay?" the girl in the white dress asked, looking worried. Now that I looked closer, she was really beautiful. She must have been on a date with her boyfriend. I gave a shy smile and thanked her. I curiously looked toward the boyfriend, but his face was hidden in the darkness, so I couldn't see him clearly. I thanked the girl again and left. Deciding to wrap up my jog, I was shocked to realize that my phone was missing. I froze for a few seconds, trying to remember, and then realized I must have dropped it while trying to escape from my pursuer. I immediately ran back the way I came to find my phone. After searching around, but still not finding it, I suddenly remembered the smartwatch I was wearing. Following the signal from the watch, I headed to the children's playground. But I had never run to this area before. Moreover, it was darker than the other areas. The playground equipment looked eerie and distorted in the darkness, creating strange shapes. The wind whistling through the dry branches, the chirping of insects, and even the weird sound of footsteps echoing in the dark. All of this turned what was usually a fun and lovely area into a place of horror and fear. I checked the signal on the watch again, and it definitely showed it was here. As I got closer to the playground, I heard music playing and was relieved to have found my phone. After wandering around the slide and seesaw for a while, all I could hear was the music from the phone. I turned around to look at the two swings a few meters away. I screamed in surprise, my heart racing and my head spinning. Someone was sitting on the swing on the left. "Who is it?" I said, my voice trembling like I was about to cry. That person didn't answer. The swing kept moving back and forth, the chains creaking, and the sound of water droplets slowly dripping made my legs feel weak. It looked like a girl in a long dress, but her back was turned, so I couldn't see her face clearly. My phone rang, and it was coming from that girl. She must have picked it up. I dropped my phone with a pink case. "Have you seen it around here?" The silence was still there, and it was haunting and unsettling beyond description. I slowly approached the girl. The phone rang even louder. Suddenly, the phone fell to the ground with a loud clatter, breaking the eerie silence. My whole body jumped. I quickly ran over and grabbed the phone right at the girl's feet. Holding the phone in my hand, I didn't have time to feel relieved. The phone was covered in a thick, fishy liquid. I was hit by that horrible smell for a few seconds. Looking down at where I'd just picked up the phone, I saw drops of water still flowing down, and the girl didn't react at all. I trembled, turned on the flashlight on my phone, and shined it toward the girl. She had tears all over her face, neck, and chest, and her eyes were wide open in panic. Her red dress was soaked, and each drop of liquid slowly flowed from her feet to the ground. It was the girl who had been with her boyfriend earlier. I ran as fast as I could, putting all my strength into it. I knew I had to get out of there quickly because that murderer could still be nearby. When I got to the security room, I collapsed and quickly told them everything in 2 sentences. The security guard and I stayed in the room until the police arrived. I told the police everything that happened, especially about that tall man. He was the top suspect in the case, but unfortunately, I couldn't see his face clearly. But on the flip side, he knew my face very well. He also knew where I was and might be lurking around. I asked the police for round-the-clock protection. I installed more security cameras, alarms, and a more modern door lock system to make sure everything was safe. For 2 months, I lived in fear and confusion and hardly left the house. By the 3rd month, the police announced they'd caught the guy while he was hiding in a neighboring state. I moved in with my parents because I felt scared and panicked whenever I was alone. I avoided all dark, dimly lit areas, parks, and even playgrounds. Once, when I went to the supermarket near my house and was paying at the counter, the cashier's eyes gave me the creeps. He was really tall, had dark skin, thick eyebrows, and was always wearing a pretty intense frown. He looked at me with a look of suspicion and anger. The case once caused a stir throughout the entire state, but as the years have passed, it has gradually cooled down. Nobody has been able to find or gather any information about me through this Reddit account either. So I decided to share my story in the hope of easing some of the burden in my heart. It was a winter night, 2 years ago. I'm walking home after spending 2 full days enjoying myself with all my energy and mind at my best friend's house. The reason I chose to walk home at that time is something I'm not sure about. At that time, I wasn't completely sober from the alcohol, and my steps were still unsteady. And then I took a wrong turn, as if it were fate's design, leading me to a different direction in life. Standing in the middle of the deserted street, I widened my eyes, hoping that I would recognize where I was. But the more I looked, the more everything seemed unfamiliar. How could I not know this road, even though I have lived here for nearly 8 years? Seeing a car parked not far away with its lights still on, I decided to run over and ask for directions. From the car, a huge white bear stepped out. To be precise, it was a person wearing a bear mascot costume. The white bear walked over to the passenger seat, opened the car door, and roughly grabbed a girl by her hair, dragging her out of the car. At first, I found it quite amusing, guessing that someone was recording a funny video since that trend was popular at the time. The girl tried to get up and run away, but she was quickly grabbed by the white bear and was struck repeatedly with powerful slaps. Without stopping, as the girl crumpled to the ground, the white bear pulled out a gun and pointed it straight at her head. "If you want to die?" It was a man, gritting his teeth and speaking in a harsh tone. The man continued to use a rope to tie her hands and feet, then shoved her into the trunk of the car and firmly shut it. Under the influence of alcohol, I laughed in delight and clapped, walking over to the man. "That was quite a performance, buddy." He immediately moved towards me, the gun aimed at my forehead. At this moment, I was skeptical about what was happening, not daring to move, raising both hands in a surrendering gesture. The man pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone it directly into my face, illuminating every detail. "Consider this as if you don't know anything, all right?" I nodded. All I could observe from him were his eyes with 2 different colors, brown and blue. The man shoved me hard, causing me to fall to the ground, and then turned away and left. "She won't die, right?" I got up and asked him with a bravery I didn't quite understand where it came from. The man turned back and looked at me with a displeased expression before driving away. I wandered for a while and found a convenience store, where I drank a few sips of cold water to wake myself up. Looking back on what just happened, I still can't tell if it was a dream or reality. The next morning, I woke up to find it past noon. My whole body was sore, and I could still feel the effects of the alcohol. I turned on the TV while having my meal, and the news reported information and images about the disappearance of a young girl. Remembering the incident I witnessed the night before, I was now sober enough to reflect on everything. I quickly grabbed my phone with the intention of reporting to the police, but noticed the money added to my account 8 hours ago. "Remember what I told you." I hesitated, afraid of the consequences as the man had clearly found out about me. I struggled for a long time. The money had shaken my resolve. I know that it is truly despicable and abhorrent. I followed every news update about the missing girl. There were no traces left, and no body was found, so she might still be alive. I have been living in torment and fear all this time. I sent the money I received to children's and animal rescue organizations. But hiding a dark secret has never been easy or lighthearted. It has greatly affected my life. Yesterday, while walking down the street with a friend, I came across a man with 2 different colored eyes, one blue and one brown. His gloomy and cold gaze seemed to fixate on me. A flurry of thoughts raced through my mind, and I could no longer hear any sounds. My face turned pale, and I could feel my mouth going dry as I was breathing heavily. When I got home, I picked up the phone to dial the police, but when the operator's voice came on, my throat went dry. What should I say, and how do I explain it to them so they understand? I am very scared, feeling helpless and desperate about my own stupidity and cowardice. Is my silence the right action, or is it a selfish act that deserves to be punished and paid for? So, this story I'm about to tell you, I've never forgotten it, even after all these years. I'm Erica, and this scary thing happened to me when I was 10. I was super scared of dogs, Not the cute, fluffy ones you see on Instagram. More like pit bulls, labs, goldens, and dogs like that. They were huge and probably weighed like twice as much as me back then. I was just this skinny little girl. Their eyes were so intense, it felt like they could see right through you. My fear wasn't something you could just laugh off. It was deep, paralyzing, so terrifying that it made my skin crawl and my body freeze up. Every time I saw a big dog, my breath would catch, and my vision would go blurry. I just stood there, my knees shaking, praying it wouldn't come any closer. That night, I was supposed to have dinner at my best friend Kelly's place. I was planning to stay after dinner for a bit, like until 7 or 8. But Kelly and I were having so much fun, just caught up in cartoons and board games, that by the time I left, it was totally dark outside. The temperature had dropped a lot, and a cold wind was blowing through the quiet suburban street, making my skin crawl. Kelly's house was just one street over from mine, and there was a shortcut. It was this narrow alley with tall walls on both sides and wild bushes growing along the way. I'd walked this way 100 times before, but tonight, it just felt different. The darkness felt like it went on forever, swallowing up the warm light from the street lamps. I walked fast, my heart pounding, trying to ignore the fear creeping up in my chest. I should have listened to that feeling, should have turned back, should have taken the long way home, under the familiar yellow light. But I didn't. I just kept walking, sinking deeper into the fear, telling myself I was probably just overthinking it. When I got to the middle of the alley, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and steady. The guy in front of me was tall, really tall, like a shadow in the dark alley. The weak streetlight only lit up part of his face, but enough for me to see his pale, lifeless skin. He was wearing a black coat, all worn out, covering his body, with just his hands showing. His fingers were long and thin, like dry branches. His face was mostly covered by a hat, but I could still see his mouth. He was smiling, like a creepy grin, almost as if he was enjoying my fear. My stomach dropped, and I remember feeling like my legs were stuck to the ground, with every part of me screaming to run. In front of me was this tall figure, barely lit, getting closer with each step, and the sound was echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Panic hit me. I tried to scream, but my throat was tight, and no sound would come out. I couldn't move. My whole body was shaking as the guy got closer, and his hand just barely touched my shoulder. I can still remember how cold his fingers felt, and how my skin just prickled with pure fear. It's dangerous to be out here alone at night, little girl. You will meet people like me. He laughed, loud and creepy. My legs went weak, and I just started crying, my heart hurting so bad. I felt like I was facing a monster, not a person. My whole body was shaking, my limbs felt numb, but I couldn't look away from him. The creep grabbed both my hands and yanked me closer to him. Before I could even react, he leaned in close to my ear, gritted his teeth, and told me if I still wanted to go home. I couldn't make a sound. A 10-year-old girl back then could only bite her lips and nod, trying to be quiet. Then I heard a loud roar, like it came from deep inside. I looked around to see where the sound came from, and there they were, 2 big dogs right at the entrance of the alley. They were feral dogs, fur all messy, ribs showing under their skin. I was facing 2 horrors at once, and it felt like my mind and heart were going to explode from all the pressure. The dogs' eyes were locked on me and the guy, their lips pulled back, showing off sharp, shiny teeth. Did they think their territory was being invaded or something? They moved fast, and before I knew it, They were on the guy. He screamed, this high-pitched, freaked-out scream, and started backing away, trying to shove them off. The dogs wouldn't back off, biting and growling, and their growls just got scarier in the alley. I saw my chance. My body finally moved, and I took off running. I ran faster than I ever had, not stopping until I got to my front door. My hands were shaking so bad. It took me 3 tries to turn the doorknob. The rest was just a blur. The rushed voices of my parents, the police, the ambulance. I remember sitting in the hospital, a blanket around my shoulders, still too stunned to talk. My parents told me the dogs chased the guy off, and they probably saved my life. The creep was badly hurt, with deep bites, some of them in pretty bad spots. He was getting treated and would have to go to court, facing the right sentence once he healed up. According to my parents, they'd been feeding the dogs for the past few months. So those dogs protected me, not because they were feral or dangerous, but because they were grateful, smart, and brave. That night changed everything for me. Even though I was still scared, I couldn't deny that deep down I felt thankful and loved them. My quiet little heroes who showed up just in time to save me. I am Rachel, a veterinarian. I've loved animals ever since I was a kid, and now I get to live out my passion working at a big vet hospital in the city. In my free time, I used to take care of pets at people's homes, especially for families who didn't feel good about sending them to pet hotels. That job not only helped me make some extra money, but also let me spend more time getting to know and understand animals better. But then last fall, something happened that changed everything. One day, I got a call from Merlin, a middle-aged guy who lives alone in a big house in a fancy neighborhood. Merlin's got 2 long-haired cats, Lily and Lulu, and a South American macaw named Daisy. I was really impressed with Daisy because she's friendly, funny, and can talk so well. Daisy absolutely loves her owner. She's always sitting on Merlin's shoulder and sweetly calling him Dad. Merlin needed me to stay for a couple of days to take care of them since he had to go on a last-minute business trip. Merlin was really happy when he found out my main job is a vet nurse, and the pay he offered me was great too. But I was a little hesitant since I'd never taken care of birds before. Merlin reassured me that Daisy was smart. She just needed to be fed on time and have her water changed regularly since she's kinda picky. I agreed, figuring it'd be a new experience. The first day, everything went pretty smoothly. Merlin had everything ready, food and clear instructions, so I had no trouble at all. The 2 cats were really well behaved, and Daisy was friendly. I even taught her a few new words. Merlin's house was huge, with modern furniture, cozy lighting, and soft carpets. I felt pretty comfortable, even though the quiet space was a little unfamiliar. When night came, I was shown to the guest room to sleep. The room was big and clean, with a single bed and a soft nightlight. But when I lay down, I heard this soft, humming sound coming from somewhere in the room. I figured it was probably the ventilation system or some electronic device in the house. I didn't think much of it and just started to fall asleep. But as soon as I fell asleep, Daisy woke me up by calling out loudly, "Dad!" I jumped up, feeling a bit uneasy, but after a few minutes, everything went quiet again. I told myself Daisy was just calling randomly and tried to fall back asleep. The next day, everything was good. In the morning, I fed Daisy, filled her water tray, and played with the 2 cats. In the evening, while I was watching TV, I got a text from Merlin. He apologized for not being able to make it back on time, asked me to stay another day, and even sent me double the pay. I happily agreed, thinking everything was all good. After dinner, I decided to hop in the shower. While I was in the shower, I heard Daisy's voice again, this time louder and clearer. "Dad! Dad!" Strangely, Daisy's voice wasn't the only one I heard. The two cats also started meowing nonstop, like they were trying to get their owner to stay close. I turned off the faucet, stood still in the bathroom, and tried to listen. But after a few minutes, the place went back to this creepy silence. I walked out, checked the main door and windows, and they were all locked. Still, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling that was creeping in. I went back to my room, locked the door, and flopped down on the bed. But that familiar buzzing sound came back, this time louder and like it was right next to me. I turned on the nightlight, sat up, and looked around the room. My eyes landed on a faint red light behind the nightstand. My heart started racing, and I was wondering where that light was coming from. My hand was shaking as I reached out and pulled the nightstand away from the wall. And then, I froze. Behind the nightstand was a small camera, and the light was on, showing it was still running. My whole body froze. A bunch of questions rushed through my mind. Who put this camera here? Did Merlin know about it? Or did he set it up? I grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it while dialing the police. My voice shook as I tried to explain what was going on. I also called my parents, begging them to come over right away. While I was waiting, I locked the door and sat on the bed. But before they got there, another sound nearly made me panic. I heard footsteps echoing in the hallway, very soft, but loud enough for me to catch in the silence. A few minutes later, the police and my parents showed up. I rushed out of the room, crying as I ran to them. My parents hugged me tight when they saw me panicking, and the police started checking around the house. They didn't find any signs of forced entry or anything weird outside. They explained that since this was Merlin's house, they couldn't search inside without a warrant or permission. I quickly packed up my stuff, sent the money back to Merlin's account, and left the house that night. I was sure he was hiding somewhere in the house, but he was the owner of the place. I just wanted to get out of there for good and not know anything else. From that day on, I just focused on my job as a vet nurse and turned down all offers to take care of pets at home. Even though I didn't want to, the memories of the house, Daisy's dad, and the hidden camera kept haunting me. It was a reminder that sometimes the safest places can hide some pretty scary secrets. I can still picture that night, freezing cold, right after Thanksgiving, when the empty highway turned into the last place I ever wanted to be. Leaving my grandma's house after a long day with family, my coat still smelled like turkey, pumpkin pie, and apple cider. It was pitch dark, and the only thing lighting up the road ahead was my headlights, casting shaky shadows of the trees. The suburban Pennsylvania roads felt weirdly quiet, like the later it got, the more it became its own little world. I didn't even notice my mistake. Somehow my gas tank had hit empty before I had a clue. I grumbled under my breath, half scolding myself, half hoping my car would magically make it to a gas station. Just when I thought I might be in the clear, the engine sputtered, coughed, and then dead silence. The car rolled a few more feet before giving up completely. I was completely stuck with no clue what to do. I wasn't about to call anyone for help. I just had to figure this one out on my own. I made up my mind to walk to the nearest gas station. I locked the car, shoved the key in my pocket, and stepped out. I looked around, dead silent, almost too quiet. The only sound was my footsteps crunching against the road. The flashlight on my phone barely lit up the path, just enough to see where I was going in the freezing night. The road felt endless. I checked my watch. Every minute dragged on like forever. The wind howled past my ears, trees casting shaky shadows in the dark, making everything feel even more off. A truck pulled up right next to me. The window slid down, and a middle-aged guy leaned out. The headlights hit his face. Gaunt, tired-looking eyes, and a scruffy beard that hadn't seen a razor in ages. "Need a ride?" His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in a while. I shook my head, thanked him, and said I was almost at the gas station. He smiled. Something about it felt off. "It's freezing, and that's a long walk. Come on, hop in. I'll get you there in no time." I hesitated, but he kept insisting, saying it was far and not safe to be walking alone this late. I started second-guessing myself. After a few seconds of debating, I figured a quick ride would get me out of this mess faster. Inside the truck, the thick smell of cigarettes and engine oil hit me, making my stomach turn. He flicked on the radio, but instead of music or news, all I heard was static. Then he started mumbling. I couldn't make out much, but every now and then, I caught words like God, salvation, and sin. I tried to stay calm, locking my eyes on where the gas station lights should be, but all I saw was darkness. The thick, uneasy silence in the truck stretched on for probably around 10 minutes. Then, I spotted the gas station up ahead, and relief washed over me. But instead of pulling in, he drove right past it. I tried to stay positive. Maybe he just didn't notice it. "Hey, you just passed it." I tried to sound casual, but my voice was tight. He didn't answer. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, and the truck started picking up speed. "Shut up." His voice was low, sharp, almost a growl. "You're gonna do exactly what I tell you." A wave of cold fear crashed over me. I darted a glance at the door handle, yanked on it, locked. I turned to look at him, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I don't want any trouble, just stop the car and let me go." He sneered, eyes flashing with something unhinged. "You don't get it. This isn't about what you want." I knew I couldn't wait. As the truck turned a corner, I saw my chance. With everything I had, I swung and punched him square in the face. He let out a scream, the truck swerved, and we crashed straight into a ditch. I slammed hard against the door. When the dust settled, I saw him slumped over the steering wheel, completely out cold. I didn't waste a second. Ignoring the pain, I kicked at the door over and over, shoving it with everything I had. Finally, it burst open, and I took off, sprinting down the dark road, too scared to even glance back. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted the glow of the gas station up ahead. I stumbled inside, gasping for air, barely able to get a word out as the clerk stared at me, wide-eyed. All I could manage was, "Please, call the cops." The police showed up and found the guy still slumped over in the truck, completely out. Turned out, he had a history of mental illness. This wasn't his first time causing trouble. I was lucky to get away, but that night never really left me. Every time I drove down that highway, I could feel it. Like someone was watching me from the shadows, their cold stare cutting through the windshield. And I promised myself, never again, no matter what, would I ever take a ride from a stranger. I'm Stella, a new student in New York University's Tisch School of Art. As I lived away from my family, so when I went to school, I chose to stay in the school's dorms so that I could get acquainted with the new environment. I'm in the same room with two other friends, Agatha and Hebe. Ever since the first day, we had already discovered a lot in common. All three of us was living away from our family, and we all shared the passion with painting. After our first few days, we assigned our bunks and arranging our luggage and personal belongings. There was 2 double-layer bunks, so there was 4 beds in total, yet there was only 3 of us. Agatha said it was likely due to the dorms not having a full stack of female students, which was no big deal. Even better, the less of us, the more space we had for ourselves. I arranged myself the second deck of 1 bunk, while 2 others would reside on the other bunk bed. It was until the late afternoon that we finally arranged our belongings. We ordered fast food, which was the first party for the 3 of us. That night we talked a lot about our lives, our interests, and our future plans. Agatha tells us some ghost stories that are rumored around the school and the dorms. I didn't believe in the paranormals, so it's just stories to me. However, Hebe was visibly frightened. Suddenly, Agatha rolled over the floor and stiffened up. Mouth continuously whirled. Eyes bleached white in convulsion. I rushed to her, while Hebe could only crawl away and start crying. Then, in all of a sudden, Agatha stood straight up and laughed out loud. Her joke was surprising, to say the least. Our feast lasted until 11 p.m., then each of us dragged ourselves back to our bunks. Needless to say, I slept soundly that night. The next days, we got used to the student lives really quickly. Agatha even bragged that there's a dude hitting her in her class. One night, I couldn't sleep due to the amount of caffeine I shoved myself in the afternoon. No matter how hard I tried to get some doozing, my eyes betrayed me at every turn. Suddenly, I was startled by a shadow over Agatha's side. That looked to be a man, and he's climbing over Agatha's bed. I was really scared. That must be a perv, or a thief, or both. But the door to our dorm was still locked, so there must be someone opening the door to that man. My thought drifted toward the dude Agatha bragged about in the afternoon. She must have opened the door for him. So I swiftly turned on the light, awakened both Hebe and Agatha. "Hey, why do you let a dude into our room, Agatha?" I angrily questioned her, much to her surprise. Seeing the confusion in her eyes, I told her the thing I had seen, only to have her shrug it off, claiming I was seeing things. And when I scoured around the room, there's no man to be found. Well, maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. So I did the logical thing there. I apologized to them both and went back to bed. Must be the stress from the incoming midterm. The next morning, I got some coffee for Agatha as an apology. She wasn't minded at all and said to me so. But Agatha asked me about someone named Maria. Agatha said she heard the name Maria somewhere and was impressed by it. My guess was Agatha heard it when she was in class, and I don't have any impression of who's named like that. That night, I went to bed very early after a very exhausting day. At night, I was startled by the noise on the other side of the bed. I looked around and was immediately baffled at the shadow trying to blend in the darkness. This time, the shadow was climbing over Hebe's bunk. That was exactly the dark shadow I've seen yesterday. I wasn't planning on turning on the light. This time I would film it as evidence. Then I would yell out to catch that dude red-handed. Unfortunately, the phone's flash woke up Hebe instead. She was groggy and grumpy at what I did, and the commotion woke Agatha up either. I immediately told them everything I was doing, even showing my evidence about it. But in the video, there was nothing of the perv. Okay, this was odd, and I couldn't say anything at their shower of questions. Hebe guaranteed that I was in some deep mental issues and demanded me to see the psychiatrist right away. At that point, I wasn't so sure about myself anymore. The next morning, when the 3 of us were preparing for our first session, Hebe suddenly mentioned a girl named Maria. Agatha immediately jumped at the name, as if the name Maria was seared into their minds. The next night, I didn't sleep anymore. I stayed up because I believed that the shadow would come back, and I really wanted to know what it was. At 12 o'clock at night, that black shadow appeared again, but this time it came out from the empty bunk beneath mine. So this thing had been under my bunk all along without me knowing it? So I feigned sleeping to watch the thing further. This time it slowly climbed up the ladder to my bunk. Close up, I realized that this wasn't a man, but a woman instead. She slowly made her way to me, a creepy smile over her emaciated face, her eyes swollen in such unnatural bulb, and her hair short and messy that I didn't see until very close. I shivered in fear, squinted my eyes shut, while this woman crawled over me and whispered into my ears, "Maria." The whisper was as if it come from the deep levels of hell. I could smell her awful breath over me. I immediately sprang into action, swinging my arms, and yelled out. Two others quickly got to my side. Agatha climbed over the ladder and jolted me off my sleep. I opened my eyes wide, swinging wildly around the room, looking for that woman. The actions I did made the two of them really worried, and they was hesitant to go any closer. I told them of what happened, and mentioned them the creepy woman saying the name Maria. The two girls were quite surprised, and they looked at each other as if they were saying anything. Agatha told me to sleep over her side of the bed to avoid seeing the nightmare again. The next morning, I woke up with a nasty headache that drained my energy for the entire day. I felt like my hair was shorter somewhat, but that I wasn't so sure. On my ears echoed the moaning and screaming of agony from a woman I wasn't sure who. Moreover, I heard the creepy laughter of two distinct women. They seemed to be very joyful about something. I took a break from class and went back to my dorm. When I reached the door, I heard that weird and creepy laughter again. The shearing pain swept through my head, blinded my eyes. Soon after, a female loud warning came screaming to my ears. "Run away, or else you will end up like me." I shook my head, trying to get myself back together, and the moment I pushed the door aside, the scene I saw dropped me on my knees. Hebe and Agatha, dressed up in a weird outfit and makeup, stood in front of my bed. On my bed was a rag doll, sporting the blonde hair that I was so sure it was mine. Over the rag doll was scraps of paper with weird icons. A loud scream in my ears urged me to run away, and I immediately hurried toward the school's executive office. And everything went blank after that. When I came back to my senses, I was in the hospital, with my parents and the executive representative. I told them what happened the previous month, and also wished to bring Agatha and Hebe to face disciplinary action for what I considered a malicious act. Yet the executive representative looked at me in awe. He insisted that I was the only person in that dormitory. Also, he mentioned about the reports from the adjacent rooms. They complained that I often talked to myself aloud, especially in odd hours, and that frightened them greatly. So what really happened there? Am I seeing things from another world, the world that was really dangerous? My story begins on an autumn night, with the weather starting to turn cold. Everything was as quiet as usual at my small farm. I am Alan, a man in his 60s, living alone since my wife, Susan, passed away from cancer. This house used to be filled with laughter and love, but now it only holds memories, items that are missing their owners, and my beloved dog, Max, who is my only companion. That night, I couldn't sleep. It seemed like the cold in my heart wouldn't let me rest. I stepped outside, breathing in the cool night air, with Max by my side. Since Susan left, I have often suffered from insomnia, and taking evening walks has become a habit of mine. Max and I wandered around the garden, under the dim moonlight, and the rustling sound of dry leaves falling. Everywhere I looked, I saw familiar images of Susan. I felt so happy, yet it made me feel even more lonely. As we passed by the window of my wife and I's bedroom, the room I had left empty since Susan's passing, a shadow flashed by very quickly. I stood frozen for a few seconds, wondering if that shadow belonged to someone. The room had been empty for a long time. I never allowed anyone to enter and always kept the door locked. There was no reason to accept that appearance except to think that someone had broken into the house. I was angry and quickly ran back inside, grabbing the rifle I had registered a long time ago, just in case something happened. Max walked beside me, staying close enough to understand the expression on his owner's face. We walked together towards the bedroom. After the lock was gently undone, I kicked the door open and rushed in, with the rifle tightly in my hands and my finger ready on the trigger. But the room was completely normal, with no signs of any break-in. I looked around every corner, checked the wardrobe, peeked under the bed, but all that surrounded me was silence. I sighed in relief, thinking it was just a bird flying by. I patted Max's head to comfort him, and, together, we returned to the room on the ground floor. The next day, I woke up, and Max was not in the room as usual. I called for Max, but he didn't appear. I searched everywhere in the house. Finally, I discovered him standing in front of the bedroom door, his eyes bloodshot and growling non-stop, as if something was making him feel threatened. I approached slowly and called Max, but he only growled more, refusing to move. I stood there silently, my heart filled with confusion. Max is a smart dog. He wouldn't be making noise unless he sensed something unusual. But sometimes, a strange smell in the air could make him uncomfortable. I comforted Max by patting his head, hoping to make him feel better. Since that morning, I have always felt a sense of unease. Max is not a stubborn dog, nor does he bark unnecessarily unless it's an emergency. Yet he still stood growling in front of the bedroom door, a place that now only held coldness and emptiness. I comforted Max and paid more attention to him, telling myself that it was just his keen senses reacting to a strange smell. But a week later, everything began to get even more strange. Sometimes I would hear footsteps in the middle of the night. They were soft and definitely not Max's. The bedroom door would sometimes open on its own, even though I was sure I had locked it securely. One morning, I discovered Susan's wedding dress, the dress I had carefully folded and placed in the wardrobe, now lying on the floor. I started to worry for real. The house that was once my safe haven now seemed to have something invisible lurking within it. A chilling feeling crept in, as if someone were watching me every time I passed by that bedroom. Max also became more tense. He no longer wandered around the house comfortably like before. Instead, he would often lie in front of the door, his eyes wide open and alert. Then one night, when it was pouring rain, I heard scratching at the door. The noise was coming from the bedroom door. A cold shiver ran down my spine, and this time, fear wouldn't let me ignore it any longer. I decided that I had to get to the bottom of it. I grabbed the flashlight, my heart pounding as I approached the room. Max was standing there. This time he didn't growl, but just silently stared at me, his eyes filled with worry. I bent down to reassure him, then reached for the door handle. The door slowly creaked open, and the space around me was engulfed in darkness. The flashlight beam illuminated, and I saw a figure sitting at the edge of the bed, a faint shadow that I never wanted to face. My heart seemed to stop, my hand gripping the flashlight tightly, unable to move. The figure slowly turned around, and I froze in shock. It was Susan, Her face pale, her eyes empty, and the weak smile I remembered turning into a twisted, eerie grin. Could it be Susan's ghost? Why is she here? In that moment, I realized something. This room not only held memories, but also contained the unresolved pain of Susan that had yet to find peace. She had never left here, never truly rested in peace. My loneliness, my pain, and my longing had kept her here, preventing her from finding peace. That was the reason I always felt her presence in this house. I sat down on the floor, my heart racing, tears streaming down my face. Looking at Susan's figure, I realized that I had trapped her. What I had been feeling all this time was not the intrusion of a stranger, but the presence of my own memories. Memories of the one I missed every single moment. Susan, I miss you so much. A cold breeze swept through the window, and I startled awake, finding myself lying on the floor, holding Susan's wedding dress in my arms. Max quietly approached and lay down beside me, his eyes softening. A sense of peace washed over me as I understood everything. The house felt lighter, as if the burden that had weighed on me all this time had finally been lifted. In the evenings that followed, I no longer heard footsteps, nor did I feel that chilling sensation when passing by the bedroom. Max also returned to his usual self, happy and comfortable as before. Now I know that Susan has truly gone, and the only thing I can do is cherish the beautiful memories we once shared together. I must continue to live joyfully and happily, just as she would have wanted. I will still take evening walks with Max, still remember Susan, but no longer with the pain and regret. The shift end bell rang down the hallway of Mercy Memorial Hospital in the outskirts of Houston, Texas. It was 2 a.m. I felt like I had been working non-stop for 3 days instead of 12 hours. My back muscles ached, and my eyes burned after a busy night shift in the emergency department. I waved goodbye to the department head with a tired smile and left the hospital. The August night air in Texas was still stifling, even though it was past midnight. Our hospital was quite far from the city center, surrounded by vast fields and sparse forests. By day, the scenery was beautiful. At night, it felt eerily desolate. My old Honda Civic was one of the few remaining cars in the parking lot. I tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, started the car, and began the drive home, about a 30-minute ride. The road from the hospital to the highway was nearly pitch black, with only a few streetlights spaced far apart. I turned on the radio to break the silence, and a familiar pop song played, helping to keep me a bit more awake. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 2:15 a.m. In just a few minutes, I would reach the highway, where there would be more lights and perhaps more cars. Suddenly, in the beam of the headlights, a figure appeared ahead. I slowed down, my heart racing as I realized it was a person lying in the middle of the road. A man, it seemed, lying motionless, face down on the ground. The nurse instinct in me immediately kicked in. Maybe he was in an accident, injured, and needed help. I looked around. No one else, no lights from any nearby houses. I slowed down, but didn't come to a complete stop, keeping a safe distance, trying to observe more closely. And then I noticed that there were no signs of an accident. More importantly, I didn't see any signs of injury on the man, despite my limited view. A quick decision formed in my mind. I would drive to the end of the street, where there was a 24/7 gas station, and call 911. I stepped on the gas, preparing to pass the man. But as I got closer, the unbelievable happened. The man suddenly sprang to his feet with incredible speed. In an instant, He was up and charging toward my car. My heart nearly stopped. Survival instincts took over, and I slammed on the gas, trying to get past as fast as I could. But he was too fast. Before I could react, the man slammed his fist into the passenger window, a deafening bang that made me jump and scream. I saw his face for a split second, a twisted face full of rage. His eyes were not the eyes of someone needing help. They were the eyes of a predator. Screaming in panic, I floored the gas. My Honda sped forward, leaving the man behind. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the road, watching my car. My hands shook on the steering wheel, my heart pounding as if it would burst. I was so close. I didn't dare think about what would have happened if I had stopped to help him. At the gas station, I quickly called 911. My voice was trembling as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. They promised to send a patrol unit immediately and advised me to stay at the gas station until the police arrived. I parked my car under the brightest lights at the gas station, trying to calm myself. The gas station owner, an older man, brought me a cup of hot coffee and sat with me while we waited for the police. "You're lucky. That stretch of road hasn't been safe lately. There've been a few robberies and even a disappearance." I sipped the coffee, feeling my body warm up. "Do you know what happened?" "No one knows for sure. But there are rumors about a group of people living in the forest nearby. Dangerous, desperate people. They'll do anything to steal money, cars, anything they can get their hands on." The police arrived about 20 minutes later, 2 officers in a patrol car. I told them what had happened, and they took careful notes. One middle-aged officer looked at me seriously. "You did the right thing. Never stop in a situation like that. Always call us first. We'll check it out now. Do you want us to escort you home?" Part of me wanted to say yes, but I also wanted to know who that man was and if the police would catch him. "I'll wait here. Please let me know what you find." The officers nodded and got back into their car. I continued sitting at the gas station, waiting anxiously. About 40 minutes later, the patrol car returned. The officer said they found signs that someone had been there. Footprints, a few cigarette butts, and, worryingly, not just one person. It seemed like at least 3 people were there. 3 people. Those words echoed in my head, making me dizzy. The officer said they would increase patrols in the area. They advised me from now on to take a different route if possible, at least until they catch those robbers. I nodded, feeling exhausted and drained. The police offered to escort me home, and this time I didn't refuse. A week passed, and although I had changed my route home, the fear still haunted me. One Friday night, about 10 days after the incident, I ended my shift at 2 a.m. I had taken the new route the police suggested, a longer road, but through areas with more lights and houses. However, that night, an accident on the main highway had blocked the new route. The detour sign forced me to return to the old road. I considered going back to the hospital and waiting until morning. But after 2 back-to-back shifts, I was too tired and just wanted to get to my bed. And anyway, I told myself, the police had increased patrols in the area. It should be safe. I drove slowly, highly alert. The radio was off. The windows were rolled up, and I focused on every movement in the darkness. As I neared the spot where the incident happened. And then, I saw it. A car parked by the side of the road ahead, its hazard lights flashing. A woman stood next to it, waving her hand for help as she saw my car approaching. This was a woman, not a man lying in the road, and she looked like she genuinely needed help. I tried to convince myself that this situation was different. I slowed down but kept my distance, rolling the window down just a little. "Do you need help?" The woman smiled gratefully. "Oh, thank you for stopping. My car broke down, and my phone died. Can I borrow your phone to call roadside assistance?" I looked at her more closely. About 30 years old, wearing an oversized coat. "I can call for you," I offered, still not opening the car door. Her expression changed, a hint of discomfort. "Well, actually, my phone's just about dead. Maybe I should call myself. Can you open the door so I can get in? I'm scared to be out here alone." "No, I'll call the police to help you. They'll be here soon," I starting to raise the window. Just as I spoke, a shadow rushed out from behind the woman's car. At the same time, another man appeared from the bushes along the road. Without hesitation, I slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The Honda roared to life and sped forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw the woman yelling something at the two men, her face showing anger. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the steering wheel. I drove as fast as I could, not daring to stop until I reached the familiar gas station. This time, I didn't just call 911, but I also called Officer Ramirez directly. 2 weeks later, news spread through the hospital. The police had caught a group of 3 people, 2 men and a woman, after they tried to attack a woman on that same road. Fortunately, the victim had managed to escape, and a nearby patrol unit had responded quickly. In the subsequent investigation, the police discovered that this group had carried out at least 5 car robberies and 2 kidnappings in the past 6 months. They lived in an abandoned house deep in the nearby forest, where the police found victims' belongings and evidence of other crimes. The day after the news was released, Officer Ramirez came to visit me at the hospital. According to Officer Ramirez, the group was 3 siblings. They lost their home after Hurricane Harvey. Unemployed, addicted, and eventually, they became desperate and reckless. When Officer Ramirez left, I stood by the hospital window, looking out at the parking lot. Cars came and went, each person in their own life, never knowing where danger might be lurking. That night, when my shift ended and I drove home, I no longer felt the fear that had haunted me for weeks.